Some stories begin with choices. Others begin with the absence of choice entirely. I found myself staring at the crumpled newspaper clipping for the third time that morning, the words blurring together like ink dissolving in water. Night janitor position, Marrowick Hotel, excellent compensation. Immediate start, no questions asked. The no questions asked part should have been a warning. In my experience, legitimate employers ask plenty of questions. Background checks, references, reasons for employment gaps. But when you're 3 months behind on rent and your last employer decided your conviction record made you incompatible with their corporate culture, you learn to appreciate the beauty of silence. The phone number led to a crisp professional voice that scheduled an interview for the following evening. The address took me deep into the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, where the roads twisted like broken vertebrae and the forest pressed against the asphalt with aggressive intimacy. The Marrowick Hotel materialized from the darkness like a fever dream of architectural ambition. Art Deco geometry carved from local stone, its facade was a masterpiece of angular elegance that seemed to defy the organic chaos of its mountain surroundings. Every window glowed with warm, golden light that suggested luxury and comfort, yet something about the illumination felt artificial, too perfect, too controlled. A sleek corporate sedan waited in the circular drive, its engine purring with expensive sophistication. The woman who emerged looked like she'd been assembled from a corporate handbook. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and the kind of calculated warmth that suggested extensive customer service training. "Mr. Davidson." Her voice matched the phone perfectly. Professional, efficient, slightly hollow. "I am Rebecca Chen, Regional Operations Manager for Virion Holdings. Welcome to the Marrowick." She led me through doors that whispered open on hydraulic hinges, revealing a lobby that belonged in a different century. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, and a grand piano sat in the center like a sleeping giant. The air held the scent of expensive flowers and something else, something that reminded me of hospitals and laboratories. Beautiful, isn't it? Rebecca's heels clicked against the marble with metronomic precision. The Marrowick was originally constructed in 1934 as a private retreat for the East Coast elite. After decades of abandonment, Virion Holdings acquired the property and restored it to its former glory. We passed through hallways lined with photographs, images of the hotel's golden age, showing well-dressed guests engaged in various activities. But as we walked, I noticed something odd about the photographs. The faces were slightly blurred, as if the subjects had moved at the moment of capture and their eyes seemed to follow our movement with uncomfortable intensity. "The position is straightforward," Rebecca continued, leading me to a small office behind the front desk. "Night custodial duties, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 days a week. The pay is $4,200 per month, plus full benefits and housing allowance." The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd been making $1,800 a month at my last job, and that was before they terminated me. This was more money than I'd ever seen in one place. "There's just one thing," Rebecca said, her smile flickering slightly. "The Marrowick operates under a very specific set of operational protocols. These aren't suggestions. They're mandatory procedures that ensure both guest satisfaction and employee safety." She handed me a laminated sheet of paper. The header read, "Custodial Operations Manual. Classified internal use only," in bold red letters. Below it, 13 rules were listed in neat, precise typography. Rule 1, never mop the 7th floor, dust only. Use the red-handled broom from supply closet C. Rule 2, if you hear the lobby piano play between 12:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., stop all activities immediately. Stand still and listen until the music stops. Do not move or speak. Rule 3, if a guest asks, "Do you see it too?" respond with, "No, I don't see anything." Do not ask for clarification. Rule 4, do not use the employee mirror in sublevel B. The facility is for storage only. Rule 5. At exactly 3:17 a.m., clean the Virion Holdings logo at the front desk. Use only the blue microfiber cloth from your cleaning cart. No earlier, no later. Rule 6. After 2 a.m., the elevator operates on automatic routing. Do not press any buttons. Simply enter and allow the elevator to complete its programmed cycle. Rule 7. Always leave room 313 unlocked, even if it appears empty. Check the lock mechanism at the beginning and end of each shift. Rule 8. If you encounter your reflection performing different actions than you are performing, continue your assigned duties. Do not acknowledge the discrepancy. Rule 9. The basement level is accessible only between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Enter only if your cleaning cart indicator light is solid green. Rule 10. If the telephone at the front desk rings exactly 7 times, answer with Marrowick Hotel, Night Operations. Do not provide any other information. Rule 11. Guest requests for mirror therapy or harmony sessions should be directed to the automated reservation system. Do not attempt to provide assistance. Rule 12. If you smell burning copper, immediately exit the building and wait in the parking lot until the odor dissipates. Rule 13. These rules are subject to modification without notice. Check your laminated sheet at the beginning of each shift for updates. I stared at the list, trying to process the bizarre collection of instructions. Each rule seemed designed to address a specific situation, but the situations themselves defied logical explanation. "I know it seems unusual," Rebecca said, her corporate smile never wavering. "But these protocols have been developed through extensive operational research. Following them ensures optimal guest experience and operational efficiency." "What kind of guests stay here?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. Rebecca's smile flickered again, and for a moment, something else showed through. Something that might have been genuine emotion. "Premium clients," she said carefully. "People who require specialized accommodations." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with practiced efficiency. "Your first shift begins tonight. The uniform and cleaning supplies are in the custodial office. Any questions?" I had dozens of questions, but the weight of unpaid bills and empty refrigerator shelves pressed down on my curiosity. "No questions," I said. "Excellent." Rebecca's smile returned to full corporate brightness. "Welcome to the Marrowick family." Night 1. The uniform was pristine. Dark blue shirt with Marrowick Hotel embroidered in silver thread, matching pants and shoes that were surprisingly comfortable. A cleaning cart waited for me in the custodial office, equipped with an array of specialized supplies. Each item was labeled with specific use instructions, and I noticed the blue microfiber cloth mentioned in Rule 5 was stored in a separate compartment marked Restricted Access. The night manager, a thin man named Gerald who spoke in whispers and avoided eye contact, provided a brief orientation. He showed me the supply closets, the elevator access codes, and the basic cleaning schedule. But when I asked about the rules, he simply shook his head. "Follow the protocol," he said, his voice barely audible. "Don't ask questions, don't deviate, don't..." He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes focusing on something behind me. I turned, but saw only the empty hallway. "Don't what?" I prompted. Gerald's gaze snapped back to me, and for a moment his expression was sharp, with an emotion I couldn't identify. "Don't trust your reflection," he said quietly. Then he disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone with my cart and my questions. The first few hours passed normally. I cleaned the lobby, vacuumed the carpets, and polished the surfaces according to the standard procedures. The hotel felt empty. No guests in sight, no sounds except the soft hum of climate control systems and the distant tick of expensive clocks. At 12:15 a.m., I was cleaning the windows in the east wing when I heard it. The soft, haunting melody of piano music drifting from the direction of the lobby. I froze, remembering Rule 2, and set down my cleaning supplies. The music was beautiful and terrible, a complex composition that seemed to weave itself into the very structure of the building. It wasn't a song I recognized, but somehow I knew it. The melody felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream or a lullaby from childhood. I stood motionless in the hallway, listening as the music built to a crescendo before fading into silence. Only then did I realize I was crying, tears streaming down my face without any conscious awareness of sadness or emotion. The rest of the night passed without incident. I followed the cleaning schedule, avoided the 7th floor, and at exactly 3:17 a.m., I approached the front desk with the blue microfiber cloth. The Virion Holdings logo was carved into the marble surface, a complex geometric design that seemed to shift and change as I looked at it. As I cleaned the logo, I noticed that the marble around it was slightly warm, as if heated from within. At 6 a.m., Gerald reappeared to check my work. He examined the cleaning cart, inspected the lobby, and nodded approvingly. "Good," he said. "You followed the protocol." "Why is the logo warm?" I asked. Gerald's expression went blank. "I don't know what you mean," he said, but his hands were shaking as he spoke. I decided not to push, not yet. The routine became familiar with disturbing speed. Arrive at 10 p.m., collect the cleaning cart, check the rule sheet for updates, begin the prescribed cleaning protocol. The hotel revealed its rhythms gradually. The soft chime of the elevator moving between floors, the whisper of ventilation systems, the barely audible hum of electronic equipment. The guests remained largely invisible, but their presence was undeniable. I would find coffee cups still warm in the sitting areas, newspapers folded to specific articles, and beds that appeared to have been slept in but showed no signs of actual occupancy. On night 3, I encountered my first guest, a woman in her 60s wearing an expensive silk robe, standing in the hallway outside room 237. She looked normal enough, but something about her was fundamentally wrong. Her movements were too fluid, too precise, as if she were performing a carefully choreographed dance rather than simply walking. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the distinctive accent of old money and older privilege. "Do you see it too?" Rule 3 activated in my mind like a reflex. "No, I don't see anything." The woman smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. "How unfortunate," she said. "It's quite beautiful." She glided past me down the hallway, her footsteps making no sound on the carpeted floor. I watched her until she disappeared around the corner, then immediately checked the guest registry. Room 237 was listed as unoccupied. Night 5 brought my first encounter with the elevator's automatic routing system. At 2:15 a.m., I pressed the call button and waited. The doors opened with their usual whisper, and I stepped inside with my cleaning cart. The elevator began moving without my input, stopping at floors in a pattern that seemed random but somehow purposeful. 3rd floor. Doors open for exactly 30 seconds, then close. 7th floor. Doors open, and I caught a glimpse of a hallway that looked different from the others, with doors made of dark wood and brass fixtures that seemed to emit their own light. The elevator completed its cycle and returned me to the lobby. Gerald was waiting for me, his expression anxious. "How long were you in there?" he asked. "Maybe 10 minutes, I said. Gerald checked his watch and frowned. "You've been gone for 47 minutes. I looked at my own watch. He was right. Somehow, I'd lost nearly 40 minutes during what felt like a brief elevator ride. "Does that happen often?" I asked. Gerald's face went pale. "Don't ask questions," he whispered. "Please, just don't ask questions. Curiosity, it turns out, is stronger than fear when you're getting paid $4,200, 0 cents a month, to follow bizarre rules in an empty hotel." During my off-march, I began researching the Marrowick's history, using the local library's archive and online databases. The official story was simple. Wealthy businessman Harrison Marrowick built the hotel in 1934 as a private retreat for his social circle. It operated successfully until 1957, when a fire damaged the building and forced its closure. The property remained abandoned until Virion Holdings purchased it in 2019. But the unofficial story was far more complex. I found a newspaper clipping from 1943 describing experimental wellness programs conducted at the Marrowick during World War II. The article mentioned innovative therapeutic techniques and cutting-edge psychological research, but provided no specific details. Another clipping from 1955 describes strange incidents at the hotel, guests reporting mirror phenomena and harmonic disturbances. The article had been written by a local journalist named Marcus Webb, who seemed to have been investigating the hotel's activities before his death in a car accident in 1956. The most disturbing discovery came from a medical journal archived at the State University. A 1952 article titled "Psychological Reconstruction Through Reflective Therapy" detailed experiments conducted at an unnamed mountain facility where subjects were exposed to controlled mirror interactions and harmonic frequency treatments. The author was Dr. Helena Voss, and the funding had come from something called the Harmony Foundation, a precursor organization to Virion Holdings. The experiments described in the article were horrifying. Subjects were isolated in rooms lined with mirrors and exposed to specific sound frequencies while being monitored for psychological reconstruction indicators. The stated goal was optimal personality integration, but the methodology sounded more like systematic psychological torture. Most of the subjects showed signs of what Dr. Voss called reflective dissociation, a condition where they began to report that their mirror images were acting independently. Several subjects had to be sedated permanently after claiming their reflections were trying to replace them. The article ended with a note that the experiments had been discontinued due to unexpected complications, and that the facility had been closed for safety reasons. I read the article 3 times, each reading making the connection more obvious. The Marrowick wasn't just a hotel. It was the site of psychological experiments that had gone catastrophically wrong. Knowledge, I discovered, changes perception. Now that I understood the hotel's history, I began noticing details that had previously seemed merely odd. The mirrors throughout the building were positioned at specific angles, creating sight lines that seemed designed to observe rather than merely reflect. The acoustic properties of the hallways created subtle echo patterns that could easily be manipulated to carry specific frequencies. And the guests, the few I encountered, all exhibited the same unnaturally precise movements I'd noticed in the woman from room 237. On night 14, I broke Rule 4. The sub-level B storage area was accessed through a door behind the main kitchen. I'd been avoiding it for 2 weeks, but my curiosity finally overcame my caution. The door was unmarked and secured with a simple electronic lock that opened with my master key card. The stairwell beyond was narrow and dimly lit, leading down to a basement level that didn't appear on any of the building plans I'd seen. The air was cooler here, and it carried the scent of ozone and something else, something that reminded me of the preservative chemicals used in medical laboratories. The basement hallway was lined with mirrors, not the ornate fixtures found throughout the hotel, but simple rectangular panels of polished black glass. They reflected the hallway's fluorescent lighting in perfect clarity, creating an infinite regression of images that made me dizzy to look at. At the end of the hallway was a single door marked EMP Facides. I opened it and found a small room containing nothing but a chair and a large mirror mounted on the opposite wall. The mirror was different from the others. Its surface seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and the reflection it showed was subtly wrong. I stood in the doorway, staring at my reflection. It looked like me, but the expression was different, more confident, more knowing. As I watched, the reflection smiled. I hadn't smiled. The reflection raised its hand in a small wave. I stepped backward, my heart pounding, and slammed the door shut. The rule sheet had changed. I noticed it immediately when I arrived for my shift. The laminated paper looked identical, but Rule 4 now read, The employee mirror in sublevel B must be cleaned daily between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Use only distilled water and bare hands. Gerald was waiting for me in the custodial office, his expression more anxious than usual. "You went downstairs," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "The mirror told us." Gerald's voice was barely audible. "It always tells us." "Who is us?" Gerald shook his head. "Follow the protocol," he said. "Please. If you don't follow the protocol, they'll replace you." "Replace me with what?" Gerald's eyes filled with tears. "With the other you," he whispered. "The one in the mirror." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "Gerald, how long have you worked here?" "I don't know," he said. "Time works differently here. Sometimes I think I'm the original Gerald, and sometimes I think I'm the replacement. I can't tell anymore." He turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my questions and my growing fear. At 4 a.m. I descended to sublevel B with a bottle of distilled water and a sick feeling in my stomach. The mirrored hallway seemed different. The reflections were sharper, more defined, and I could swear I saw movement in my peripheral vision. The employee facility door was already open. Inside, the mirror showed my reflection clearly, but something was wrong with the image. The reflection was wearing a different uniform, one that was cleaner, newer, and had a name tag that read Davidson, Senior Custodial Specialist. I reached out with my bare hand and touched the mirror's surface. It was warm, almost body temperature, and the glass felt strange under my fingers, not quite solid, not quite liquid. As I cleaned the mirror, my reflection began to mouth words. I couldn't hear anything, but I could read its lips. "Help me." The reflection pointed downward toward the bottom of the mirror. I looked down and saw something that made my blood freeze. At the base of the mirror, barely visible, was a small plaque. Davidson, Michael. Original, terminated. November 23rd, 2023. Replacement activated. November 24th, 2023. Today was November 24th, 2023. I was the replacement. The revelation should have terrified me into quitting, but instead it sparked a desperate need to understand. If I was a replacement, what had happened to the original Michael Davidson? And how many other employees at the Marrowick were also replacements? I began documenting everything. The guest encounters, the rule changes, the anomalous experiences. I photographed the mirrors, recorded the elevator's automatic routing patterns, and tracked the timing of various phenomena. The patterns that emerged were disturbing. At the hotel operated on a 24-hour cycle, but not the normal cycle of day and night. Instead, it followed a rhythm based on the psychological experiments from the 1950s. Guests were exposed to specific stimuli at precise times. Their responses monitored and recorded through the mirror network. The mirrors weren't just reflective surfaces. They were observation and recording devices, connected to a central system that tracked every movement, every expression, every moment of psychological stress or breakdown. The guests themselves were the subjects of an ongoing experiment. They weren't staying at the hotel by choice. They were being preserved here, their consciousness trapped in a cycle of repeated experiences while their mirror selves lived out their lives in the outside world. And the staff, Gerald, I, and presumably others, were the maintenance system for this psychological prison. I found the guest files in a locked cabinet in the manager's office. My master key card opened the lock, and inside were detailed psychological profiles of every guest at the Marrowick. The files were clinical in their precision, documenting years of observation and behavioral analysis. Each guest had been selected for specific psychological characteristics: wealth, influence, knowledge of sensitive information, or simply the right combination of mental vulnerability. The woman from room 237 was Margaret Ashford, a pharmaceutical heiress who had been admitted to the Marrowick in 1978. Her file contained detailed notes about her reflective dissociation progress and her mirror self-integration status. According to the records, Margaret's mirror self had been living her life in the outside world for over 40 years, managing her fortune and business interests while the original Margaret remained trapped in the hotel, unaware of the passage of time. The files revealed the true purpose of the Marrowick. It was a corporate preservation facility designed to maintain valuable individuals in a state of psychological stasis while their mirror selves served as perfectly controllable replacements. Varian Holdings didn't just own the hotel, they owned the people inside it. Rule 1 had always puzzled me. Never mop the 7th floor, dust only. But after discovering the guest files, I understood that the 7th floor was where the originals were kept. I waited until 3 a.m., when the hotel's activity was at its lowest, and took the elevator to the 7th floor. The doors opened to reveal a hallway that was identical to the others, but the air was different. Thicker, more oppressive, carrying the scent of medical equipment and something else that might have been fear. The rooms on the 7th floor were occupied, but the occupants weren't guests. They were prisoners. Through the small windows in each door, I could see people sitting in chairs, staring at mirrors, their faces blank with the expression of those who had been broken beyond repair. Room 313 was different. The door was unlocked, as per Rule 7, and inside was a man who looked exactly like me, but older, worn down by months or years of captivity. He looked up as I entered, and his eyes filled with recognition and despair. "You are the replacement," he said in my voice. "I've been waiting for you." I started asking questions, he said, "just like you're doing now." They let me investigate, let me discover the truth, because they knew it would drive me to the breaking point. And when I broke, they activated you. "How long have you been here?" "Time doesn't work the same way here," he said. "It could be weeks, could be months. The mirror self experiences linear time, but the original experience is something else, a kind of eternal present where every moment stretches into infinity." He gestured to the mirror on the wall, which showed my reflection looking back at us. "That's you," he said. "The you that's been living your life, working this job, following the rules. The you that's real now. What happens if I try to leave? They'll replace you with a new mirror self and you'll join me up here. The cycle continues forever, or until Varian Holdings decides they don't need their custodial staff anymore. There has to be a way out." The original Michael smiled sadly. "There is," he said, "but it requires destroying the mirror network, and that would release all the guests back into the world. Can you imagine what 40 years of psychological imprisonment would do to someone? Can you imagine Margaret Ashford trying to reclaim her life after decades of captivity? Maybe that's better than this." "Maybe," he agreed. "But are you willing to make that choice for everyone?" Rebecca Chen returned on night 35, bringing with her a team of technicians and what appeared to be a new employee, a young woman who looked nervous and desperate in the way I remembered feeling 3 weeks ago. "Mr. Davidson," Rebecca said, her corporate smile as bright as ever. "I trust you've been finding the work satisfactory." "Yes," I said, though the word felt like swallowing glass. "Excellent. We have some system upgrades to perform tonight, so you'll be working with reduced access to certain areas. Please focus on the lobby and guest floors 1-6. The technicians disappeared into the basement levels, carrying equipment that looked more like laboratory apparatus than maintenance tools. The new employee, introduced as Sarah Martinez, was given a brief orientation and a laminated rule sheet. I watched her read the rules with the same mixture of confusion and desperate need I'd felt on my first night. She was young, maybe 25, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who had run out of options. "The rules seem unusual," she said to Rebecca. "They're based on extensive operational research," Rebecca replied with her standard corporate response. "Following them ensures optimal guest experience and operational efficiency." After Rebecca left, I found myself alone with Sarah in the custodial office. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. 3 weeks, I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Is it really as simple as following the rules? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw myself from 3 weeks ago. Desperate, grateful, willing to ignore obvious warning signs for the promise of financial security. No, I said, it's not simple at all. The rule sheet had changed again. Rule 13 now read, in the event of systematic termination, all custodial staff will report to sublevel B for final processing. I understood what that meant. The experiment was ending, at least for the current staff. We were being replaced by a new generation of mirror selves, and the originals would be permanently stored on the 7th floor. Sarah hadn't noticed the rule change yet. She was still in the early stages of adjustment, following the protocol without question and avoiding the areas that might reveal the truth. I had a choice to make. I could warn her, tell her everything I'd discovered, and try to convince her to leave before she became too integrated into the system, but that would mean condemning her to poverty and desperation, and there was no guarantee she'd believe me. Or I could let her discover the truth gradually, as I had, knowing that the process would ultimately lead to her replacement and imprisonment. There was a third option. I could try to destroy the mirror network and free everyone, but that would mean releasing decades of psychologically damaged individuals into a world they no longer understood. I spent the rest of the night walking through the hotel, observing the guests and staff, trying to understand the full scope of what Virion Holdings had created. The Marrowick wasn't just a prison, it was a preservation system, maintaining valuable individuals in a state of suspended animation while their mirror selves served the corporation's interests. The experiments from the 1950s had succeeded beyond their designers' wildest dreams, creating a sustainable method for controlling and utilizing human consciousness. But the cost was enormous. Every guest, every staff member, every person who had been processed through the mirror network had lost their fundamental humanity, reduced to mere data points in a vast corporate algorithm. I found the master control room on night 42, hidden behind a false wall in the basement. The room was filled with monitors showing feeds from every mirror in the hotel, each one displaying the activities of both the originals and their mirror selves. The system was more complex than I'd imagined. The mirrors weren't just observation devices, they were quantum storage units containing the complete psychological patterns of every person who had been processed. The originals on the 7th floor were essentially biological servers, their consciousness providing the processing power for their mirror selves. A technical manual left on one of the desks explained the process in clinical detail. The mirror self wasn't just a copy, it was a carefully edited version of the original, with inconvenient memories removed and behavioral patterns modified to serve corporate interests. The original Michael Davidson had been a skilled maintenance worker with a strong moral compass and a tendency to ask difficult questions. The mirror self me had been programmed with enhanced technical skills and a reduced capacity for moral uncertainty. I was a better janitor than the original, but I was also a more compliant employee. The manual also revealed the true scope of the operation. The Marrowick was just one facility in a network of corporate preservation sites. Virion Holdings maintained similar operations around the world, each one designed to capture and control individuals who posed potential threats to corporate interests. Business leaders, politicians, journalists, scientists, anyone who had access to sensitive information or the ability to influence public opinion was a potential target for mirror self replacement. The first sign that something was wrong came at 2 a.m., when the elevator stopped responding to commands. Instead of following its programmed route, it began moving randomly between floors, its doors opening and closing with no apparent pattern. At 3:17 a.m., I approached the front desk to clean the Virion Holdings logo, but the blue microfiber cloth was missing from my cart. In its place was a red cloth that felt warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. The logo itself had changed. Instead of the familiar geometric design, it now showed a complex pattern that hurt to look at directly, lines and curves that seemed to writhe and shift like living things. As I touched the cloth to the logo, the marble surface began to crack. The cracks spread outward in precise geometric patterns, and from within the cracks came a sound like breaking glass mixed with human screaming. The hotel's electrical system began to fail. Lights flickered and died, leaving sections of the building in darkness. The climate control system made grinding noises before falling silent, and the air grew thick with the smell of ozone and burning electronics. I ran to the basement control room and found chaos. The monitors were showing static, the quantum storage units were sparking and smoking, and alarms were sounding throughout the building. A message appeared on the main screen: system failure, quantum containment breach. Initiating emergency protocol. The emergency protocol was simple: preserve the data, eliminate the witnesses. Security doors slammed shut throughout the building, trapping the staff in their assigned areas. Gas began flowing through the ventilation system, not enough to kill immediately, but enough to induce unconsciousness. I managed to reach the 7th floor before the gas overwhelmed me. The doors to the guest rooms were opening automatically, and the long-imprisoned originals were stumbling out into the hallway, their minds shattered by decades of captivity. The original Michael was among them, but his eyes were vacant, his movements mechanical. The years of psychological imprisonment had reduced him to a shell of his former self. "I tried to warn you," he said, his voice flat and emotionless, "but you had to see for yourself." "We can still escape," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Escape to what?" he asked. "The mirror self has been living your life for weeks. Your apartment, your few friends, your pathetic bank account, all of it belongs to the replacement now. There's no place in the world for the original." He was right. Even if I managed to leave the hotel, I couldn't reclaim a life that had been stolen and replaced. The mirror self was the real Michael Davidson now, and I was just a broken copy. But I had one advantage: I knew the truth. The hotel was collapsing, not physically, but psychologically. The quantum storage system was failing, and the boundaries between original and mirror self were breaking down. Throughout the building, guests and staff were experiencing spontaneous memory integration, sudden awareness of their true situations. Margaret Ashford was screaming in the lobby, her mind struggling to process 40 years of lost time. Other guests wandered the halls in various states of psychological breakdown, some catatonic, others violent with rage and despair. I found Sarah in the custodial office, staring at her reflection in a broken mirror. "I'm not real," she said quietly. "I'm just a copy of someone who died yesterday." "We're all copies," I said, "but we're still alive. That has to count for something, does it? What's the point of being alive if nothing we do matters?" I didn't have an answer for that, but I knew that giving up wasn't an option. The master control room was in chaos. The quantum storage units were overloading, their contents spilling out in waves of raw consciousness that manifested as hallucinations and false memories. The building itself was beginning to phase in and out of reality, its existence dependent on the stability of the mirror network. I found the emergency shutdown controls and began the termination sequence. The process would destroy the quantum storage system and release all the trapped consciousness, but it would also collapse the hotel's reality matrix. Everyone inside would die, originals and mirror selves alike. As I initiated the shutdown, I heard Rebecca Chen's voice over the intercom. "Mr. Davidson, please report to the lobby immediately. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Her voice was different now. Less corporate, more human. The system failure had affected her too, breaking down whatever programming had kept her compliant. I left the control room and walked through the collapsing hotel one last time. The walls were flickering between different time periods, sometimes showing the Art Deco elegance of the 1930s, sometimes deficiency. At a half of 3%, got sometimes the clinical sterility of the 1950s experiments, sometimes the modern corporate efficiency of the Viron Holdings renovation. In the lobby, I found Rebecca standing beside the piano, her corporate uniform replaced by a simple dress from the 1950s. "You've destroyed everything," she said, but there was no anger in her voice, only sadness. "I freed everyone," I replied, though I wasn't sure if that was true. "Have you? Look around you, Michael. Look at what freedom looks like." I turned and saw the other staff members and guests scattered throughout the lobby. Some were catatonic, others were rocking back and forth, and a few were screaming at mirrors that no longer showed their reflections. 40 years of psychological imprisonment had left them broken beyond repair. "They deserve to know the truth," I said. "Did they?" Margaret Ashford spent decades believing she was living a normal life, managing her business, contributing to society. Now she knows that 40 years of her life were stolen, that everyone she thought she knew was interacting with a copy while she rotted in a corporate prison. Was that kindness? Rebecca walked to the piano and pressed a single key. The note echoed through the lobby with unnatural resonance. "I've been here since 1963, she said. "I was Dr. Voss's assistant during the original experiments. I thought I was helping people, providing therapy for trauma victims. When I discovered the truth, I tried to expose it. What happened? They made me the first successful mirror self-integration. For 60 years I've been managing this facility, believing I was doing important work. The original Rebecca died in 1964, but I've been carrying out her duties ever since." She played another note, then another, building the melody I'd heard on my first night. "This song," she continued, "was composed by one of the original test subjects. He wrote it during his final days of coherent thought, before the mirror therapy broke his mind completely. We play it every night, as a memorial to everyone who was lost." The melody was beautiful and terrible, a musical expression of loss and longing that seemed to capture the essence of what the Marrowick had done to its victims. "The shutdown sequence is irreversible," I said. "The quantum storage system will collapse within the hour." "I know," Rebecca said. "I activated it myself years ago. I've been trying to destroy this place for decades, but the system always repairs itself. Tonight feels different, though. Tonight, it might actually work." "What about the mirror selves out in the world?" "They'll continue their lives, unaware that their originals ever existed. In some ways, they're more real than we are now. They have homes, jobs, relationships. They're living the lives we were supposed to live." Thought about the other Michael Davidson, the one who had been going to work, paying bills, perhaps even dating someone. He was more successful than the original had ever been, more confident, more capable. In every measurable way, he was an improvement. "So what's the point of this?" I asked. "If the mirror selves are better versions of us, why fight to destroy the system?" Rebecca stopped playing and looked at me with eyes that held 60 years of accumulated sorrow. "Because choice matters," she said. "Because the right to fail, to struggle, to make mistakes, that's what makes us human. The mirror selves are perfect, but they're not real. They're corporate products, designed to serve specific functions. We're the originals, and even broken, even failed, we're still ourselves." The building shuddered, and cracks appeared in the marble floor. The quantum storage units in the basement were reaching critical overload, and the hotel's reality matrix was beginning to collapse. "Will it hurt?" I asked. "I don't know," Rebecca said. "I've never died before." The end came in waves. First, the mirrors throughout the building began to crack, their surfaces spiderwebbing with fractures that revealed glimpses of other realities, the world outside where our mirror selves lived their stolen lives. Then the guests began to disappear, not physically, but psychologically. Their consciousness, freed from the quantum storage system, finally dissolved into the cosmic background radiation of human thought and memory. Margaret Ashford was the first to go. One moment she was sitting in a chair, staring at her hands, and the next she was simply gone. Her body remaining, but her mind released into whatever comes after a lifetime of forced captivity. The hotel structure began to phase in and out of existence. Walls became transparent, then solid, then transparent again. The floors tilted at impossible angles, and the ceiling showed glimpses of star-filled sky. I found Sarah in the custodial office, sitting calmly at the desk with her hands folded. "Are you afraid?" I asked. I was, she said, but then I realized I was never really here anyway. I died yesterday when they created the mirror self. This is just the epilogue. Do you think we're doing the right thing? I think we're doing the only thing we can do. We're choosing to die as ourselves, rather than live as copies. The building shuddered again, and through the windows I could see the forest pressing closer, as if the natural world was reclaiming the space the hotel had occupied. Gerald appeared in the doorway, his face calm for the first time since I'd met him. "The basement is flooding," he said. "Not with water, with memories. All the stored consciousness is spilling out at once. It's beautiful and terrible." "How long do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less. The quantum field is collapsing, and when it goes, everything goes with it." I walked back to the lobby, where Rebecca was still playing the piano. The melody had evolved into something complex and sorrowful, a musical obituary for everyone who had been lost to the Marrowick's corporate machinery. "Any regrets?" I asked. "Only that it took so long," she said. "I should have found the courage to do this decades ago. You weren't ready then. None of us were." The piano keys began to fade under her fingers, becoming transparent and then dissolving entirely. But the music continued, as if the hotel itself was playing the final notes. Through the windows, I could see the sunrise, the first natural light the Marrowick had seen in decades. The golden rays streamed through the glass, and everywhere they touched, the building began to dissolve like mist. "It's time," Rebecca said. I sat beside her on the piano bench and watched as the world collapsed around us. The last thing I saw was my reflection in the window. Not the broken, imprisoned original, but someone who had finally made a choice that mattered. The quantum field collapsed with a sound like a million mirrors breaking at once, and the Marrowick Hotel ceased to exist. I don't remember dying. One moment I was sitting in a collapsing hotel, watching reality dissolve around me, and the next, I was standing in a parking lot, looking at an empty field where a building had once stood. The sun was rising over the Appalachian Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The forest was thick and undisturbed, showing no signs that anything had ever been built there. "Mr. Prenigan, would you like to help us?" "I don't think there are any signs that anything had ever been built." I looked down at my hands and found them solid, real, unchanged. I was still wearing the Marrowick custodial uniform, still carrying the master key card in my pocket. But something was different. I could feel it in the way the air moved around me, in the way my footsteps sounded on the asphalt. I was more present somehow, more connected to the world around me. I walked to the edge of the parking lot and looked back at the empty field. There was no trace of the hotel, no foundation, no debris. It was as if the Marrowick had never existed at all. But I knew it had existed. I had the memories, the scars, the knowledge of what Virion Holdings had done. The question was, what was I going to do with that knowledge? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It was dead, the battery drained by exposure to the quantum field collapse. But as I held it, the screen flickered to life, showing a single message. Quantum storage backup initiated. Mirror self-network intact. Report to nearest Virion facility for reintegration. I stared at the message, understanding its implications. The Marrowick had been destroyed, but the mirror self-network survived. Somewhere in the world, another Michael Davidson was living my life, and the system wanted me to report for reintegration, which undoubtedly meant my final elimination. I deleted the message and turned off the phone. Then I started walking toward the main road, leaving the empty field behind. I had no money, no identification, no legal existence in a world where my mirror self had claimed my identity. But I had something more valuable, the knowledge of what Virion Holdings was doing and the determination to stop them. The original Michael Davidson was dead, and the mirror self owned the life he'd built. But I was something new, a survivor of the Marrowick, a witness to corporate evil, a man with nothing left to lose. As I walked, I began to plan. I would find other survivors, other people who had escaped from Virian's facilities. I would document their crimes, expose their operations, and fight to free the thousands of people still trapped in their mirror networks. It would be dangerous. It would probably be futile, but it would be real. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of mist from the mountains. Somewhere behind me, a bird began to sing. A simple, natural melody that had nothing to do with corporate algorithms or psychological manipulation. I smiled and kept walking. Final documentation. The following document was found in a safety deposit box rented under the name M. Davidson in Charleston, West Virginia. The box was discovered after the mysterious disappearance of several Virion Holdings executives and the sudden closure of 3 wellness facilities in remote locations across the United States. To whoever finds this document, my name is Michael Davidson, and I am the original custodial staff member who worked at the Marrowick Hotel from November 2023 to December 2023. I am writing this as a warning and a testament to the crimes committed by Virion Holdings and their network of corporate preservation facilities. The Marrowick Hotel was not a hotel. It was a prison designed to capture and contain individuals whose consciousness, knowledge, or influence was deemed valuable to corporate interests. Through a process called mirror self-integration, the victims were replaced with carefully programmed copies while their original consciousness was stored in quantum containment systems. This technology, developed from psychological experiments conducted in the 1950s, allows corporations to effectively own and control human beings. The mirror selves live normal lives in the outside world, but they are programmed to serve corporate interests without question or moral hesitation. I have reason to believe that similar facilities exist around the world, operated by Virion Holdings and related corporate entities. The victims include business leaders, politicians, journalists, scientists, and anyone else who poses a potential threat to corporate power. The mirror cells are not evil. They genuinely believe they are the original people, living their normal lives. But they have been edited, their inconvenient memories removed, and their moral objections suppressed. They are perfect employees, perfect citizens, perfect servants of corporate will. The originals are kept in psychological stasis, their consciousness used as biological servers to maintain the quantum patterns of their mirror selves. Most of them are unaware of their true situation, living in artificial realities that simulate normal life while their minds slowly deteriorate from prolonged captivity. I survived the destruction of the Marrowick, but I know that other facilities remain operational. I have spent the last 6 months documenting Virion Holdings' corporate structure, identifying their properties, and attempting to locate other survivors. If you are reading this, it means something has happened to me. Please continue this work. Please find the other facilities and expose the truth. Please free the thousands of people still trapped in corporate prisons. The mirror cells living in the world are not the enemy. They are victims too, unaware of their true nature. But the system that created them must be destroyed, and the originals must be freed, no matter the cost. Watch for the signs: corporate facilities in remote locations, employees who seem too perfect, businesses that operate only at night, and people who follow bizarre rules without question. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And remember, in a world where consciousness can be copied and edited, the only way to remain human is to choose authenticity over perfection, struggle over compliance, and truth over corporate convenience. The mirror shows us what we are, but it cannot show us who we choose to be. Michael Davidson, original, December 2023. Additional note found paperclip to the document. They found me. The mirror self network is more extensive than I realized. If you're reading this, you may be next. Trust no one who seems too perfect, too compliant, too willing to follow rules without question. The revolution begins with remembering who you really are. 3 months after the Marrowick's destruction, I was walking through a small town in Pennsylvania when I passed a coffee shop with large windows. In the reflection, I saw myself, but not the broken, scarred man I had become. I saw the mirror self, living his normal life, working his normal job, completely unaware that he was a corporate creation. He looked happy. He looked successful. He looked like everything I had wanted to be, but never managed to become. For a moment, I envied him. He had my life, but he was living it better than I ever had. He was confident where I was uncertain, decisive where I was hesitant, successful where I was struggling. But he wasn't real. He was a product, a carefully designed simulation of human consciousness, created to serve corporate interests. I turned away from the window and continued walking. Behind me in the reflection, the mirror self continued his daily routine, unaware that he was living a stolen life. And I realized that I had made the right choice. I would rather be a broken original than a perfect copy. The war against Varian Holdings continues. Every day I search for other survivors, other facilities, other victims of corporate consciousness theft. It's dangerous work, and I know that someday they will find me and eliminate me. But until that day comes, I will continue to fight for the right to be human. Flawed, struggling, authentic human beings in a world increasingly populated by perfect corporate copies. The mirror shows us what we are, but it cannot show us who we choose to be. And I choose to be real.